Hello, my fantastic friend. Where exactly are you tuning in from? A peaceful countryside spot or a huge city full of energy? Comment your city and country below. And please share this video. It really helps my channel grow. Let's begin. Darkness had long blanketed the sky, and though Dana couldn't tell the exact time, she was certain it was far too late for a phone to be ringing. She silently hoped it was Miles's phone and not hers. Still, she buried her head under the pillow, relieved when the ringing cut off after 5 piercing tones. But the reprieve was short-lived. The phone began blaring again almost immediately. "God damn it," she muttered, prying open her eyes. "Miles, can you just pick up the—" Her words faltered as she turned toward the other side of the bed and found it empty. Bewildered, she glanced at the clock. 3:37 a.m. Her concern began to mount as she reached for her phone on the nightstand. He had been beside her earlier, so where had he gone? "Hello?" she said groggily. "Is this Dana Morgan?" a voice asked. "Yes, this is she. Who's calling?" she said, now fully alert. "Are you the spouse of Miles Morgan?" "Yes, I am. Why? What's going on?" "Mrs. Morgan, I'm calling from the emergency room at North City Medical Center. Your husband was brought in just under an hour ago. We had your number from a previous visit. He was in a car accident. We need you to come immediately." "Oh no, is he okay?" "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm not permitted to discuss medical details over the phone. Please come as soon as possible." "I'll be there," she said, already swinging her legs out of bed. She hurried upstairs to her daughter's room. Delaney, named after the city where she'd been conceived, was in college, but still living at home to cut costs. After 1 year in the dorms, she'd decided the campus lifestyle didn't support her academic goals. "Delaney, wake up!" Dana called softly. No reaction. "Delaney," she tried again, lightly touching her shoulder. Still nothing. "Delaney," she said more firmly this time. Her daughter jolted upright, blinking against the glare, clearly rattled by the abrupt awakening. "Honey, your dad's been in an accident. He's in the ER. We have to go, now." They threw on clothes and rushed out, driving toward the hospital at a speed that flirted with reckless, but stayed just under suspicion. During the tense ride, Delaney bombarded her mother with questions, but Dana had few answers to give beyond what she'd been told. Despite the streets being mostly empty and the drive taking only 10 minutes, it felt endless. Dana spotted a parking space near the hospital entrance and pulled in hastily, not bothering to straighten out the car. They both jumped out and raced through the sliding glass doors. Eventually, a nurse led them through the sterile maze to Miles's room. The sight waiting for them made them freeze. He lay unconscious, swathed in bandages, motionless on the bed. A nurse handed them a clipboard full of forms. Even in crisis, the red tape remained. Delaney pulled her chair up beside her father, unwilling to be even inches away. The silence stretched on for nearly an hour until 2 uniformed officers stepped into the room, a man and a woman. "Good evening, ma'am," said the female officer. "I'm Officer Gail Stanton, and this is my partner, Officer Robert Hansen. We were the first responders at your husband's crash." "Have you heard anything about how he's doing?" Dana asked anxiously. "No one's given us an update." She gestured toward her daughter. "This is my daughter, Delaney." "I know this isn't the easiest time," Stanton said gently, "but we'll need to ask a few questions. The sooner we do, the better." Dana nodded. "Okay, I'll answer whatever I can." "Do you have any idea why your husband would have been out so late?" Stanton asked. "That's what I don't understand," Dana replied. "He was home. We both went to bed around 10. I had no idea he'd even left until I got that call." Stanton turned toward Delaney. "Can you confirm that?" "Yeah," Delaney said. "We were all watching a movie together, just something on TV. It ended around 10. Then we all went to our rooms. I saw Dad head into my mom's bedroom." "What movie were you watching?" the officer asked. "Some action film with Keanu Reeves," Delaney answered. "Dad picked it. It was his turn." "Were there any problems at home?" Stanton asked. "Any financial stress? Relationship issues?" "Nothing unusual," Dana said. "Just the usual highs and lows like any couple goes through. No serious problems. I can't understand why he would just leave like that without saying a word to me. Were there injuries in the other car? That's just it, Mrs. Morgan. There wasn't a second vehicle involved at all. According to 2 eyewitnesses, your husband's car was driving normally up until the moment it suddenly accelerated and slammed head-on into the big oak tree at the intersection of highways 121 and 288. No skid marks were found, and no one reported seeing any brake lights. Dana and Delaney looked at the officers, slowly piecing together the implication. Are you suggesting my husband crashed on purpose? That he tried to take his own life? We'll need to inspect the vehicle thoroughly to rule out mechanical issues, and naturally, we'll speak to your husband once he's conscious. But yes, it's a possibility we have to consider. Are you completely sure there weren't any problems? Nothing you might have missed? Officers, I love my husband dearly. We've always had a stable and loving relationship. No, nothing comes to mind that could possibly explain this. I honestly think he might have fallen asleep or momentarily lost concentration. It was really late. There has to be a logical explanation. Her voice trembled, and before she could finish, Dana broke down in tears. Officer Stanton quietly placed a business card on the table, telling them to call if they remembered anything else, and then exited the hospital room. Delaney gently pulled the door to Miles's room shut behind her. You didn't tell them, did you? No, I didn't, her mother said, brushing tears from her face. That's private. It's not relevant to this. Your father was okay with it. If that hasn't changed, he'll speak up about it when he's able. We'll handle it if it becomes necessary. The next few days passed slowly for the family. Miles remained unresponsive. He was in the hospital, and Dana and Delaney stayed close by, either together or taking turns, making sure he was never alone. Dana reached out to Miles's boss, someone she knew personally, and explained the situation, carefully choosing her words to avoid any suggestion that the crash might have been intentional. The accident happened late Saturday night. It wasn't until Wednesday morning that Miles began to stir. By midday, his eyes were open. Though he couldn't talk or move much because of the medical equipment, it was clear he was conscious and aware. Dana rushed to his side, offering soothing words and letting him know he was safe. A nurse soon entered, responding to the monitors indicating he was awake. Dana stepped back to give her space. Shortly afterward, another staff member arrived to check his vitals. Seizing the moment, Dana slipped out into the hallway to call Delaney with the news that her father was awake. When Delaney didn't answer, she left a voicemail. Not long after, most of the machines were disconnected. Miles had a broken left arm, but since he was right-handed, it wouldn't hinder him too much. His throat was raw from the intubation, so the medical team handed him a whiteboard to communicate. He scribbled something, and the nurse read it, then looked at him for confirmation. He nodded. Without a word, she left the room while other staff continued their care. Mrs. Morgan, I need to let you know that your husband has asked that both you and your daughter not be allowed into his room. Excuse me. He's my husband. I have a right to be with him. I'm very sorry, ma'am, but we're obligated to respect the wishes of the patient. Please, let me talk to him. We can work through this. Dana tried to step around the nurse but was stopped. Her desperation rising, she began to shout, Miles, please talk to me. What is happening? Miles, please. Mrs. Morgan, I need you to lower your voice. You're disturbing other patients. You're welcome to wait outside, but if you attempt to enter again or cause another scene, we'll have to ask you to leave. Do you understand? Yes, I understand, Dana whispered, her spirit visibly broken as she sat back down in her chair. About 45 minutes later, Delaney showed up at the hospital and found her mother sitting outside Miles's room. Mom? Why are you out here? Your father told the staff we're not allowed in. Both of us. What? Both? Okay. Maybe I get why he doesn't want to see you, but me? What's that supposed to mean? And why are you only showing up now? I just woke up. Brent stopped by to check on me and, well, one thing led to another. Are you kidding me? You were sleeping with your boyfriend instead of being here for your dad? I'm sorry, Mom. He was still unconscious when I left, Delaney said, her tone flat, lacking any real trace of guilt. It was overwhelming and I needed a break. Honestly, it helped to step away. Call me later if you need to. No, Delaney. I'm not going to, she snapped. And let's just not talk about it anymore. It's not appropriate. The irony of that made Delaney laugh under her breath. Scene transition. There was a knock at the door before a tall woman with chestnut hair entered. She was poised and well-dressed, not in scrubs, but her badge made it clear she worked at the hospital. Good morning, Mr. Morgan. I'm Dr. Lassiter. I specialize in mental health support here. How are you feeling today? As good as anyone in my position can feel, he replied. It had been 9 days since the accident. He could speak again, no more dry erase boards. He'd asked repeatedly about going home, but no one had given him a straight answer, until now. The hospital's asked me to speak with you for a bit. Are you comfortable with that? She asked. Do I really have a choice? Not particularly. If you want clearance to be discharged, my signature's required, she said with a small, knowing smile. Then let's get on with it. Dr. Lassiter pulled a chair close to the bed and settled in, crossing one leg over the other with graceful ease. She took a moment to flip open the file in her hands. You were brought in just over a week ago after crashing into a tree. The report also notes that you've refused visits from your wife and daughter. I'm guessing those two things are connected. They are, Miles answered curtly. My wife was having an affair. Sadly, that's not rare these days, but things rarely escalate to this extent. Was there more to the story? Miles went quiet. The last thing he wanted was to dissect his private life in front of a beautiful stranger. He briefly wondered if there was a more senior male psychiatrist he could speak to instead. Dr. Lassiter didn't push. She waited patiently, clearly accustomed to long silences. After a while, he began speaking. I've been dealing with depression, I think. Has it been officially diagnosed? Not really, it's just, like I said, I've felt depressed. Was there a clear trigger, or was it more general? I couldn't perform, not in over a year. It started after the first accident. She nodded slightly. She obviously already knew, having reviewed his medical file, but she needed him to say it aloud. It wasn't a huge crash, he explained. I wasn't even in the front seat. My boss's boss was driving. We got rear-ended. No real damage, no airbag deployment, but I wasn't braced for it. Ended up with whiplash, hit my head on the seat in front. I guess that was enough. Your chart mentions mild whiplash and a concussion, she said. My doctors couldn't pinpoint anything conclusive. Nothing worked, not even the ED prescriptions. They ran all sorts of tests, some of them more than once. The best explanation I got was that something in my brain stopped functioning the way it should. So your performance suffered. Your wife became dissatisfied. She looked elsewhere, and eventually, everything unraveled. That's the simplified version, yeah. How long did it take before she started seeing someone else? 7 or 8 months, give or take. I can understand why that would be difficult to come to terms with. In the beginning, we thought it was temporary. We'd even laugh about how, once it passed, we'd spend an entire weekend making up for lost time. But it never went away. Eventually, she stopped hoping. Did she ever talk to you about how she felt before stepping out? I came home earlier than expected one day and walked in on it. Straight out of some low-budget drama, I know. And how did you respond? What could I do? She wasn't entirely wrong. I couldn't meet her needs. I didn't blame her. She made a choice she thought was necessary. Let's say, hypothetically, she had come to you beforehand, asked for permission. What would you have said? I've played that scenario over in my mind countless times. Part of me wants to believe I'd have said yes, because I loved her, and I wanted her to be happy. But no, I don't think I could have given her my blessing. We made vows, promised to stand by each other through the hard stuff. I wouldn't have done that to her. So how could I be okay with her doing it to me? And she kept seeing the guy? Yeah, of course she did. Once I caught on, she didn't bother disguising it as much. I can't say if she started seeing him more often. There was no way to compare, since I hadn't known how frequent it was before. But what used to happen only during weekday hours while I was away at work had crept into our weekends. She'd suddenly have errands, and it was obvious now that some of that time was being spent with Blake. That knowledge alone felt unbearable. And truthfully, unbearable doesn't come close to what it really was. Still, I didn't believe I had any real choices. She was entitled to her own sexual agency, and I wasn't in a position to offer her that. But standing by and watching it unfold, it was shredding me from the inside out. You asked about the night of the crash. That evening, we were all in the living room watching a movie together. We still had moments like that, flickers of what used to be normal life, delicate and fleeting. I kept everything buried deep. The emotional strain, I shouldered it alone. Probably a mistake in hindsight. But I couldn't bring myself to drop that weight on Dana or Delaney. They kissed me goodnight, like always. Delaney gave me a casual night and walked off down the hall. That's when it hit me. Her eyes didn't carry the same recognition anymore. I wasn't her dad in the same way, and I certainly wasn't a man in her eyes. I couldn't blame her. I had stopped seeing any worth in myself, too. I went through the usual steps of my evening. Dana did the same. Every part of it felt robotic, well-worn habits on autopilot. I waited until she was asleep, then quietly got dressed, grabbed my wallet and keys, and slipped out. Before leaving, I crept upstairs and peeked in on Delaney. She was sound asleep. I kissed her on the forehead and whispered goodbye. Then I walked out to the car. I knew it had airbags, but I figured if I went fast enough, they wouldn't matter. There was no grand design. I just started driving. At some point, I remembered this massive oak tree off the road, a landmark, not a target at first, but it stuck in my mind. The first time I passed it, I noticed the road was clear, no other cars, no barriers, a clean, straight shot. So I turned around, aligned the car, and floored it toward the tree. Afterward, there was a long silence, everyone taking it in, trying to make sense of it all. Eventually, the doctor broke the quiet. "Mr. Morgan, I appreciate your honesty. It's rare. I'm going to give you some space now to rest and reflect." "Can I come back tomorrow?" she asked. "I'll be here," he answered. They shook hands, and Dr. Lassiter left the room. Miles reached for his phone. It had been left at home that night, but Dana had brought it to the hospital before he asked her not to. He replied to a few texts and emails, including one from his supervisor. Then he shut his eyes, willing himself to sleep. Back at the house, Dana tried to hold herself together. She had always assumed Miles accepted her relationship with Blake, that he'd given his silent approval as an act of love. But after learning the truth behind the crash, she started to question everything. At first, she thought it had just been an accident. Now she wasn't so sure. She assumed the police had spoken to him, though she hoped he hadn't brought up her affair. The authorities never followed up with her. Legally, there was no crime. Case closed. And truthfully, he'd never voiced any real objection, had he? If he had, she couldn't remember it. Besides, she wasn't about to deny herself what she needed because some broken man decided to take a death drive. That wasn't the life she had signed up for, and she wasn't about to change course now. When Miles came home, she'd make an effort, be a little more careful, more considerate about Blake. But she wasn't planning on stopping. Next chapter. The following morning, true to her word, Dr. Lassiter came back. She followed the same path to his room, picked one of the basic but solid chairs, there were always two, and sat down across from him. Miles looked at her with interest. "How are you today, Mr. Morgan?" she asked. "No big change, Doc. I'd rather be back home, but I get that's not my call." "Well, partly it is," she said. "But officially, you're still under a 72-hour psychiatric hold, and the clock didn't start until we had our first session yesterday. So, you've got at least 2 more days." "That's fine," he replied. "At least the food's not awful." "It's always awful," they both said at the same time, then shared a laugh. "Old line, but it still lands." Lassiter grinned. "I'm glad to see you laughing." "Yeah, me too. Been a while, and by a while I mean months." He shifted in the bed, trying to get more comfortable. I used to be a pretty funny guy, enough to get on Delaney's nerves at least. No more thoughts headed into dark places? No back alley corners of the mind? No, Doc. I've been stuck in this fog of depression for a year, and these last few months, it got even darker. But that haze is gone now. What's taken its place is anger. A lot of anger. Mostly toward Dana. A bit toward Delaney. But most of all, I'm mad at myself for not speaking up, for never telling my wife that what she was doing wasn't okay. And now? She asked. Are you ready to start doing that? Yes, he said without the slightest pause. While the thought of getting a divorce is undeniably appealing, I can't pretend I'm blameless in how things ended up like this. I stood by and watched her cross lines that should have never been touched. That said, if she's ready to cut ties with Blake, then I'm willing to see a therapist and honestly try to repair what's left of our marriage. Your honesty is admirable, Mr. Morgan. It's rare to see someone shift their mindset so decisively. While I was lying here waiting for you, I had more than enough time to sort through my thoughts. Thank you for letting me speak freely. It really helped me clarify things in my own head. That's genuinely good to hear, Mr. Morgan. In that case, I'll make sure I stay on schedule today. My day's a bit more packed than it was yesterday, so I'll make the most of what time I have. I'll stop in tomorrow for a final session, but at this point, I don't see any obstacles to your discharge as planned. Looking forward to it, Doc. When the day came, Dana and Delaney arrived together to bring him home. Miles knew that if he was serious about returning to any kind of normal life, he'd have to act like healing was possible. There was still emotional damage that needed tending. Thankfully, the airbags had performed better than Miles expected. His worst injury was a concussion, which left him requiring long periods of silence and low light. The TV stayed off. Soft, ambient music filled the quiet. His wife and daughter kept close, offering quiet comfort as he recovered. Things remained peaceful for about a week, until Dana casually mentioned she needed to make a run to the store. Miles, calm but firm, replied, "No." "What do you mean, no?" Dana blinked in disbelief. "There's no reason for you to go. Delaney can handle it, whatever we need, even the ointments." "Why am I being volunteered for this?" Delaney objected. "I've already got plans to meet up with Brent." "Then you'll just have to move quickly and get back in time," Miles said plainly. "Dana, give her the list." "This is ridiculous, Miles," Dana snapped. "You can't waltz in and start dictating how we live. Delaney has her own life, and I'm going to the store. That's final." "You think I'm an idiot, don't you?" "What? No, of course not. Why would you even say that?" "Because I know what's really going on. Don't insult me by pretending your little errands aren't about seeing Blake. You come back empty-handed every single time. No groceries, ever. It's the perfect cover, but you've slipped up. The truth is written all over you. It's in the way you avoid my eyes, the way your clothes aren't quite right, your smeared makeup. You've been with him, and that ends now." Dana's face froze in shock. Delaney, sitting nearby, watched her father with a new sense of respect, one she hadn't expected to feel. "Miles, please. We've had this conversation already. I'll be more careful, I swear. I got lazy, I admit it. But I'm not ready to give Blake up." "So our vows meant nothing to you?" Miles asked. "Forsaking all others, in sickness and in health? Was that just pretty language to you?" "This is about illness, yes. But the rest of it? I'm not letting that go. Unless you force me to. If you demand it now, I'll stop seeing Blake. We'll go to counseling. We'll try to fix this. Or if you say no, I'll be calling a divorce attorney Monday morning." "You're not doing that, Miles Morgan. Don't try to control me. If being with only you was enough, I'd do it. But it's not. That's not my fault. I wasn't even there when the crash happened. Yet somehow, I'm expected to carry on like everything's fine? Like we can just skip the part where there's no intimacy? That's not realistic. So I'm leaving. I'm going to see Blake, and I'm going to get what I need. If you want to talk later, fine. But don't think you get to decide the rules for me." Without another word, Dana walked out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. Miles and Delaney locked eyes before he quietly turned and made his way back to the bedroom. For the first time, Delaney felt genuine fear for her parents' future. Her father had never challenged her mother so directly before. But then again, nothing this serious had ever threatened their marriage. Still, realizing there was little she could do, Delaney gathered herself and headed out to meet Brent. Next chapter. Jesus, Dal, what's going on with you? Brent asked, clearly irritated. I'm sorry, Brent, it's just my parents. There's a lot happening. Well, try to shake it off for now, all right? Come on, babe. Let's just have a good time. It'll help you unwind. God, Brent. Don't you ever get tired of doing the same thing all the time? Delaney snapped, irritation seeping into her voice. All we ever do is sit around and waste time. Why don't you ever take me out? A proper date, dinner, maybe bowling or mini golf. Just something different, something fun for once. Brent stared at her, unfazed. I don't even like mini golf or bowling, so why should I bother? He replied bluntly. And just like that, a quiet certainty settled over Delaney, cold, sudden, and final. Exactly, she said, her voice even. You wouldn't, and now you won't need to. Without another word, she turned on her heel. I'm done. I'm leaving. Go find someone else to waste time with. She didn't wait for his reaction. She didn't look back. As she walked out of his room, his voice followed her. Dal, wait. But she didn't stop. Sure, he looked good. But now she saw the truth clearly. He was immature, lacked ambition, no sense of a shared future. Brent's idea of a life plan was to coast through college and walk into a job at his dad's company. Not because he cared about the work, but because it was easy. Delaney doubted he'd ever be anything more than the title etched on his office nameplate. From downstairs came the slam of a door. Damn it, how many times have I told him not to slam that damn thing? Blake barked. Upstairs, Dana exhaled, surprised by how numb she felt toward Blake. In fact, she realized with a quiet jolt, she didn't really like him at all. And Brent? Just another lazy, selfish man. Nothing more. Chapter 2. By the time Delaney made it home, the sky had already gone dark. The house was dim and still. She found her father lying in bed, the soft light from the bathroom spilling in through the crack in the door, left ajar, just enough to glow without flooding the room. None of the bedside lamps had a dim enough bulb. Dad, she said gently. He didn't look at her, but acknowledged her presence with her name. Delaney. I'm sorry, she murmured. That made him shift. Slowly, he sat up, curiosity mixed with wariness as he turned to face her. She stood in the doorway, tears beginning to trace silent paths down her cheeks. Sorry for what? He asked. He hadn't used endearing names for her since he'd found out she had played a role in helping her mother find someone new. And even now, with her crying in front of him, he held back, unsure if this was sincere or just another wound in disguise. She stepped closer, stopping at the foot of his bed. I'm sorry for what happened, she said. I never meant to hurt you. I was just trying to help Mom. She was in a dark place. And with everything you were going through, not being able to... Their eyes locked for a moment. I mean, you couldn't, be close. Brent told me his dad went through something like that when Mrs. Coyle died. He still talks about how much he misses her, especially the intimacy. I thought maybe Mom and Blake could give each other what they were missing. I didn't stop to think how deeply it would cut you. Miles blinked, processing her confession. Her words weren't what he expected to hear, and part of him still questioned if he should believe her. But for now, he was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. So that's what that night was really about? He asked. She nodded. Mostly, I was struggling too because I couldn't fix anything. I felt useless. They exchanged another look, this one softer, almost a smile shared between two people who'd carried too much pain for too long. But I'm done with that now, Dad, she said quietly. I won't make that kind of mistake again, and I hope you won't either. I still need you. She hesitated, then asked, Are you going to divorce Mom? I don't know yet, he answered honestly. But unless she ends things with Blake, I don't see how we move forward. Don't bring it up to her, though. If she's going to make a change, it has to come from her, not pressure. Delaney nodded. Okay, Dad. Her voice was low. I'm heading up. At the doorway, she paused. Oh, and I broke up with Brent today. Miles looked at her, surprised. He'd never been a fan of the kid, but he knew how much Delaney had cared for him, or thought she had. What made you decide that? He asked. She considered the question. Because you once told me he wasn't the right guy for me, and today, I finally saw what you meant. You were right. A faint smile tugged at the corners of Miles's mouth. His daughter had matured, maybe in just a single day. She came forward and hugged him, arms wrapped around him like they used to. It was the first real hug they'd shared in what felt like forever. When she stepped back, she gave him a small smile, then quietly walked out and headed upstairs. Her bedroom door had barely clicked shut when Miles heard the beep of a car locking outside. The warmth he'd felt moments before vanished in an instant. He sank back into bed, closing his eyes. A few seconds later, Dana walked in. It was obvious she'd come straight from Blake's place, freshly showered, a quiet, unspoken arrangement they no longer even tried to hide. Can you help me bring in the groceries? She asked. He didn't budge. There are actually groceries this time? Miles, she said, rising slowly from her chair. That's right, Miles. Like I told you, I went out for groceries, and here they are. He brought the paper bags in from the car, setting them carefully on the counter. As he began unloading them, something didn't sit right. There was nothing chilled, nothing from the freezer, just shelf-stable goods. His eyes drifted to the receipt. The timestamp told him she'd left the store almost 2 hours earlier. Judging by the sequence, she'd bought groceries first, then met up with Blake. Miles had suspected as much. Still, seeing the evidence in black and white struck him harder than he expected. Without saying a word, he finished putting everything away and headed for the bedroom. He lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling, debating whether raising the issue again would make any difference. It probably wouldn't. Dana had made her position painfully clear. What mattered now was how he planned to respond. Something needed to give. Do you want to talk? She asked, her tone already hinting that the conversation would go nowhere. No, Dana, I know where you stand. Her features softened and her voice dropped into something warmer. There was still affection there. Miles was the one person she could always be herself around. She didn't believe she had to sacrifice her own happiness for the sake of the marriage, and she silently wished he would come to understand that. Are you hungry? She asked, disrupting the silence. No. I made fettuccine while you were out. I hope you had some greens with it. You've been neglecting your vegetables lately. No salad, she admitted, but I did cook some spinach. Miles gave a faint nod. Dana turned toward the closet to change. She briefly considered whether they could reconnect physically. She missed that closeness. But tonight didn't feel like the right moment. When she returned, dressed in fresh clothes, Miles's eyes were closed. If he wasn't actually asleep, he was doing a convincing job pretending. Next chapter. The divorce process was anything but amicable. Dana exploded when she received the papers. Miles had sent them straight to the house, a quiet but resolute gesture. He was now living with Delaney, settled into the guest room beside hers. Dana wasn't about to let things end on his terms. She retained an aggressive attorney determined to exhaust every possible tactic. One of their more vicious moves was attempting to have Miles labeled mentally unfit, citing a past suicide attempt. But Miles had been ready for that. He'd anticipated her playing that card and had taken action. The same week he filed the papers, he began seeing a therapist, partly to protect himself and partly to genuinely heal. His psychologist was reputable and expensive, and when called to testify, confirmed that Miles posed no current threat to himself. The judge promptly threw out the claim. The legal fight might have dragged on endlessly, but before things could spiral further, Delaney intervened. She faced her mother directly, calling her out. Dana was wrong, she said. The promises she'd made in her marriage still held weight, and chasing happiness didn't erase her responsibilities. Life didn't always deal fair hands, but love demanded compromise. Then came the ultimatum. If Dana kept pushing, she'd lose Delaney too. Confronted with the real possibility of being abandoned by both husband and daughter, Dana backed down. The house was put up for sale. Miles consented to paying spousal support for a few years, knowing the court would likely order it anyway. Dana found a 2-bedroom rental closer to her office and resumed working full-time about 8 months after the divorce was finalized. But letting go wasn't easy. Resentment simmered, especially after Blake ended things with her. It turned out she wasn't the only woman in his life, and now that she was single, the appeal had worn off. Delaney continued her education, dividing her time between both parents. Over time, Dana stopped framing herself as the innocent party, though she still harbored resentment toward Miles. She'd often mutter, if only he'd tried harder to understand. Every time Delaney overheard, she had to fight the urge to shout. And as for Miles, next chapter. It was just after 10 on a Friday night when Miles stepped into the soft neon haze of the club. He needed this, needed to remember what it felt like to be alive. He was searching for space to breathe, maybe a drink or two, maybe even a dance. Lately, he didn't recognize the man in the mirror. Something had to shift. He found an empty bar stool and ordered a rum and coke. As he sipped slowly, his eyes scanned the room, casually taking in the crowd. Near the far end of the bar, a woman caught his eye. She was sipping what looked like the last of a glass of wine. Something about her felt familiar. Miles glanced again, uncertain, and then turned away. A minute passed in that limbo between memory and clarity. Then it hit him. He smiled faintly. Lifting his drink, he wove his way through the crowd toward her. She noticed him before he reached her. Their eyes met. "Dr. Lassiter?" he asked. She looked at him closely, trying to place his face. The recognition didn't come right away. For a second, Miles wondered if he'd mistaken her for someone else. "I just dropped Dr. Lassiter off at the hospital. Outside the halls of charts and check-ins, she's simply Vicky. But I'll admit, you've got the edge now. It's been a long time, and you've probably treated more people than I've had coffee with licensed therapists. I've always been better with names than with faces. Give it a try, Miles Morgan." Vicky turned the name over in her mind, her eyebrows knitting together as she dug through her mental files. Miles studied her quietly, waiting to see if anything clicked. Later, he'd swear he saw the exact moment recognition sparked behind her eyes. "Mr. Morgan, let's see. Cheating husband and an unfortunate collision with a tree, correct?" "Spot on," he said, clearly surprised. "And honestly, I didn't expect that. We only had 2 sessions, and that was, 2 years back?" She gave a modest shrug, smiling. "It's a bit of a gift. Care to join me?" He slid onto the stool next to hers and gestured to the bartender for another round. "Appreciate the drink." "Of course. What brings you here tonight? Meeting someone?" "That's the plan," she said, her tone and the playful spark in her eye leaving little to guesswork. "Really? I could have sworn you had a pretty serious ring on that finger once." "You remember correctly," she said with a sly smile. "It was before the divorce. I continued to wear it, mostly to remind my ex-husband, that he didn't have much in common with a 20-year-old cashier, except for their shared passion for group intimacy with her roommate. Unfortunately, the hint didn't work." "Oof. Are they still a thing?" "You might find this shocking, Miles, but after the divorce, I stopped tracking Wayne's romantic exploits. Couldn't tell you if I tried." "Fair enough. That was dumb. And really, just Miles, or even Jackass. Anything but Mr. Morgan." "What did your wife call you?" "Miles." "Then Miles it is. Feel like dancing?" "I'd love to." Miles asked the bartender to hang on to their drinks and reached for Vicky's hand, guiding her toward the dance floor. The music pulsed, infectious and bold, and they caught the rhythm effortlessly. One energetic beat flowed into another before things finally slowed down. Still, they stayed out there. As the softer track took over, their bodies moved closer, Vicky's arms looped around his neck while Miles's hands came to rest at the small of her back, secure but respectful. He couldn't help noticing she wasn't wearing a bra. They locked eyes for a few seconds before she gently laid her head on his shoulder. The tempo eased into another slow ballad, and neither one pulled away. Miles felt immersed in her nearness, the warmth of her skin, her scent, the subtle pressure of her body molded to his. She was impossible to ignore. As the last notes faded, Vicky used the hush that followed. "Want to take this somewhere more private?" Miles didn't say a word. He took her hand, returned to the bar, paid the tab, and told the bartender they wouldn't need the drinks after all. The bartender didn't seem the least bit surprised. Vicky had arrived by rideshare, so she slid into his passenger seat without hesitation, and they headed for his apartment. It wasn't big, but he liked not having to worry about lawn care anymore. "Vicky," he said as they approached his building, "I should have asked this earlier. How much have you had to drink? Just one glass of wine. You saw it when you came over. Why? Because I don't hook up with women unless I know they're totally clear-headed. No need to worry, Miles." They parked in the underground garage and rode the elevator up. As the doors shut, Vicky leaned in. "Then take me to your bed." Roughly an hour later, tangled in the sheets and each other, drifting somewhere near sleep, Miles broke the silence. "Vicky? Do you think you'd ever be ready for something real again?" She didn't reply right away. A pause stretched out between them, and he wondered if he'd gone too far. Maybe she'd get dressed and ask for a ride home. But this wasn't just about the chemistry. She was smart, quick-witted, confident in a way he rarely saw. Since his own divorce, no one had made him feel this open to possibility again. "Let's talk about it in the morning." "That's fair. Good night, Vicky." "Good night, Miles." The next morning, Vicky stirred before Miles did. He was still peacefully asleep, so she slipped away to the bathroom, took a quick shower, and padded into the kitchen to see what she could pull together for breakfast. His question from the night before still rang in her ears. It had caught her off guard. Not because she didn't find him attractive, she absolutely did, but she'd started the evening with one intention: to have a good time. For months, she'd told herself over and over, "I don't need a man." And honestly, it was true. Her job was solid, her friendships were deep, her life was rich. She didn't need anyone. But if she was being completely truthful, she wanted someone. The real question was, if she laid everything bare, would someone like him still want her back? The smell of cooking nudged Miles awake. A mix of curiosity and concern pulled him toward the kitchen, where he found her standing. "I was going to surprise you with breakfast," he said with a grin. "You missed your window," she teased, "but I'm not ruling out lunch. Why don't you freshen up? I'll have breakfast ready by the time you're done." About 10 minutes later, Miles reappeared, hair still damp from the shower, just as Vicky was setting plates down. She had prepared a fluffy omelet, added some slices of sausage, and arranged buttered toast on the side. "I honestly forgot I even had sausage left," she said with a laugh. "Must have been hiding in the back of the freezer. Hope it's still good." He took a bite and nodded approvingly. "Tastes fine to me." The meal went by smoothly. Since she had done the cooking, Miles offered to take care of the dishes. Their conversation remained light and casual, the kind that fills the quiet without requiring too much thought. As he closed the dishwasher and dried his hands, he turned toward her with a more serious tone. "Can we have that talk now?" "As ready as I'm going to be," she replied. He paused, choosing his words with care. "I don't want to put you on the spot or move too fast. If this is something casual for you, I can accept that. You don't owe me a commitment, but I do think it's only fair to be honest. Maybe we should sit down." She agreed, and they walked together to the bedroom, hands clasped. Sitting side by side on the edge of the bed, Vicky drew in a deep breath. "Miles, we just met face to face last night, officially. I like you, a lot. I'm attracted to you, no question. But before we go any further, there's something I need you to understand. What I told you about my husband leaving me for someone younger? That's true, but it's not the full story." She glanced away briefly before meeting his eyes again. "He left because I couldn't have children. He wanted a biological family, wouldn't even entertain the idea of adoption. When I couldn't give him that, he saw me as the problem. I was the failure in his eyes. We haven't talked since the divorce, so I can't say how he feels now. Miles listened intently. I'm in my 40s, and I already have a daughter who's grown. I like kids, sure, but not being able to have more? That's not something that would ever make me walk away. A faint smile appeared on her lips. I'm glad you feel that way. There's more, though. I'd rather not keep anything hidden. After the divorce, I went through a pretty dark stretch. Losing my husband to a much younger woman destroyed what little confidence I had left. I'm 37, by the way. I figured, Miles said, but I didn't want to be rude and ask. They both chuckled, breaking the tension. I felt broken, like I wasn't enough, like I'd failed as a woman. It sounds irrational, but it's how I felt. I couldn't give him children, so I convinced myself I had to prove my worth in some other way. I created a different persona, Angela, and I started sleeping around, not out of love or desire for connection, but just to feel something. Most of the time it was meaningless, just a way to feel wanted. That went on for a while. Eventually, I recognized how much it was hurting me. I began therapy, which helped a lot, but it wasn't a clean break. It took time. Slowly, I pulled myself out of that place. Miles waited a moment before speaking gently. Was last night part of that? His voice held no judgment, just a desire to understand. It started that way, yes, she admitted. But something about it, about you, felt different. I still have urges, and I do go out now and then, but I'm more careful. I don't just jump into bed with anyone anymore. Honestly, some nights I just go home alone and handle things myself. Miles gave a soft smile. Then I guess I should feel pretty special to have made the cut. You should, she said, matching his smile. Because you are. I've really enjoyed being with you. And I'd like to see where this might go, if you're open to that. But I needed you to know all of it first. I've been tested recently, clean across the board. I don't use birth control anymore, but I can show you the paperwork if you want. If we're going to give this a real shot, I think we should both get tested and agree to be exclusive. Miles didn't answer immediately. He sat, thoughtful, weighing everything she'd said. Vicky stayed quiet, watching him, nerves twisting inside her. Eventually he looked up. I appreciate your honesty, Vicky. That couldn't have been easy. And I think you deserve the same from me. He exhaled slowly. My story's not all that different, to be honest. After my marriage ended, I survived, but I wasn't the same. I felt like I'd lost something fundamental, like I wasn't the man I used to be. I wasn't sure if I'd ever feel truly seen or loved again. My therapist once told me that, for a lot of women, the desire for physical intimacy fades with age. I started to think I'd either have to wait a long time for something meaningful or settle for someone I didn't really connect with. And even when things in my life improved, that lingering sense of inadequacy never completely disappeared. While you were driven to affirm your identity as a woman, I was entrenched in my own pursuit of what it meant to be a man. I roamed the streets at night, chasing fleeting connections, convincing myself I was some kind of irresistible playboy. Standards? I had none. Some of the women I ended up with, well, let's just say I wasn't the only one taking them for a spin. Think of the city's public bikes and you'll get the idea. That stage lingered far too long, and unlike your journey, mine came with consequences. It all unraveled when I came down with gonorrhea. There I was, sitting in a sterile clinic, embarrassed and unable to recall a single name of the people I'd slept with. That moment shook me. It forced me to take therapy seriously and finally confront the mess I'd created. What followed was inevitable, facing Dana. That came not long after Miles and Vicky had become a serious item, about 3 months into their relationship. Their connection had deepened by then. Vicky had built a warm relationship with Delaney too. Even though they still maintained separate apartments, they were practically living together, and anyone could see they were heading toward a future as husband and wife. One evening, they decided to visit a lounge known for attracting a more mature crowd. The atmosphere was mellow, soft music from the DJ, a dance floor removed from the tables, perfect for both movement and conversation. Miles and Vicky were sipping cocktails and enjoying the easy flow of conversation. Everything was going smoothly, until Miles's face abruptly changed. His grin disappeared, and his gaze fixed on something or someone behind Vicky. Sensing a shift, she turned around to see what had pulled his focus. That's when they both saw her. Dana. Their eyes met nearly at once. Miles kept a neutral expression, but Dana approached with a grin that carried more venom than warmth. Though a year had passed since the divorce, her bitterness hadn't faded one bit. To her, the divorce had never been her fault. In her mind, her biggest error had been a lack of discretion, not infidelity. She didn't view her affair as a betrayal, but as a necessary fix to a problem Miles couldn't resolve. And now, as she walked toward them, she had no intention of being civil. "Miles, what a surprise," she said with thinly veiled sarcasm. "Dana," he responded, his tone polite but firm. He motioned toward Vicky. "This is Dana, my ex-wife. Dana, meet Vicky." "Nice to meet you," Vicky said warmly. "Miles has mentioned you." "Has he?" Dana replied icily. "Funny, I haven't heard a thing about you." Miles kept his composure. "We've been divorced for over a year now. My life isn't your business anymore." His words were measured, but the message beneath them was loud and clear. "You're not part of this." "Of course, Miles," Dana said, pretending to step back. "I won't take up your time. But Vicky, there is something you might want to know." "And what might that be?" Vicky asked, calmly glancing at Miles before returning her attention to Dana. "Oh, nothing dramatic. Just that our marriage ended because he wasn't functioning anymore." Miles held his breath, watching Vicky closely. Her reaction? A small, amused smirk. She turned toward him with mock surprise. "Is that so? You never brought that up." He gave her a slight shrug, offering nothing. Vicky's tone was playful, unbothered. Dana, meanwhile, felt she'd delivered a devastating blow. Confident that she'd cracked the foundation of their relationship the same way Miles had once disrupted hers with Blake. She thought she'd scored a victory. But that confidence crumbled quickly. "That's interesting," Vicky said lightly, "because everything seems to be working perfectly these days." Dana's smile vanished, confusion settling on her face. "Wait, what? How's that possible? Did the doctors ever figure it out?" Miles and Vicky let the silence stretch, watching her stew in uncertainty. "Miles, I'm serious. That problem tore our marriage apart. Don't I deserve to know what changed?" Miles's face hardened. "Let's be clear, Dana. It wasn't my condition that broke us. It was your choices. Sure, it was tough, but you're the one who checked out, not me. And no, you don't get to demand answers. My life is no longer your concern." Dana tried again, her tone more tentative. "Fine, blame me if you want, but deep down, you know I wouldn't have stepped out if things had been okay between us." Vicky cut in before Miles could respond. "The doctors ran every test they could. Nothing ever turned up. Then, out of nowhere, things just started working again. Maybe the injury finally healed. Who knows? But if you'd stuck around and honored your vows, you'd still be sitting beside him." Dana stood there stunned, her mouth slightly open, unable to form a response. Miles had once considered telling her the full truth about the tree accident, but he knew better. He could already picture her twisting the story, claiming her affair and the crash that followed somehow triggered his recovery, making her the reason he got better. He wasn't about to give her that story. "This is unreal," she muttered. "It's like the universe is punishing me." Miles, almost under his breath, said, "He just wanted to feel whole again." She leaned in. "What did you say?" He didn't answer. Dana's eyes burned with a fierce determination as she posed her question. What followed was a stillness, utter, absolute silence. Nothing more. "You understand now, don't you? So, if you don't mind, we'd like to spend the rest of our evening in peace." For 30 seconds, Dana didn't move a muscle, clearly deep in thought. Then she turned toward Miles and met his gaze. "You're right, Miles," she murmured. "I really am sorry. What I did was wrong, completely selfish and careless. I should have been stronger. I ruined something that mattered. Please, forgive me." Without another word, Dana stepped away, not just from the table, but from the entire venue. Miles and Vicky watched in silence as she disappeared into the darkness, an unexpected sense of compassion rising within them. Miles faced Vicky again, a smile forming on his lips. He extended a hand toward her. "Shall we dance, love?" Epilogue. 6 months after that unforgettable night at the club, Miles and Vicky exchanged vows. Not long after, 9 months to be exact, their daughter Ella entered the world. Wait, weren't you under the impression that Vicky couldn't conceive? You're not wrong, she can't, but allow me to explain. Just a few months into their marriage, Miles heard the phrase every man dreads. "We need to talk." It was a quiet Sunday morning. They were sharing breakfast at the kitchen table. Saturdays belonged to Vicky's cooking. Sundays were Miles's domain. He'd sensed a change in her over the past several days. She seemed distant, distracted. So when she slid a folded newspaper clipping across the table, he wasn't exactly caught off guard. "What's this, honey?" "Just read it," she said simply. Miles glanced over the article. It described the fatal shooting of a man named Wayne Jessup, who had been killed by police during a domestic disturbance call. The piece, dated a few weeks earlier, recounted a troubled relationship between the deceased and his much younger partner, who had an infant at home. It was tragic, sure, but to Miles, it read like just another heartbreaking headline. "Okay, I read it, so what's the connection?" "Wayne Jessup was my ex-husband." Miles froze. They'd barely ever spoken about her ex, just a passing mention, something about him leaving her for a cashier or someone similar. "Wow, are you okay? How are you dealing with this?" I was shocked, honestly. He never showed any signs of aggression when we were together, so it all felt surreal. I couldn't stop thinking about that young woman. No one deserves to experience that. "Yeah, but how does this involve us?" I didn't feel guilty exactly, but I did feel responsible somehow, like maybe I could help. Miles leaned in, trying to follow. "You know the paper sometimes contacts me for research or data for their stories. I reached out to one of those reporters, not in my role as a psychologist, but as someone who used to be part of his life. I asked them to pass along my contact info to her in case she wanted to talk." "And she did?" "Yes, she reached out. We've talked on the phone a few times and met in person too." "You've been meeting with her? And this is the first I'm hearing of it?" "I know. I'm sorry. That first meeting felt personal, something I needed to do quietly. After that, I didn't want to violate her trust by telling you. Eventually, it started to feel more like a professional connection. But I always knew I had to tell you. So, here we are." Miles exhaled, slowly, carefully. "Was she the one he left you for?" "Number that was Amy. She walked out on him after he started pushing her to have a child. She wasn't ready, maybe never would be. The woman I've been talking to is someone else. Her name is Carly." "Okay, and what's her story?" "Wayne pressured her too. Carly was unsure about motherhood, but she was young, in love, and thought having a baby might be the right next step. But everything changed once the baby arrived. He grew distant, first emotionally, then physically abusive. It started with words, then escalated. She dismissed the signs at first, blamed it on the pressures of being a new parent. But the last incident crossed a line. It was serious, so she called the police. She thought they'd calm him down, maybe take him in for a night, that they'd sort it all out by morning. But that's not how it unfolded. When Wayne realized she'd contacted the authorities, he exploded. He screamed, cursed, then pulled a gun from a drawer. She didn't even know he owned one. She grabbed her baby and locked herself in the nursery, terrified. Police arrived minutes later. Carly stayed hidden, listening. She could hear Wayne yelling, insisting nothing was wrong, claiming they had no business being there. Officers tried to de-escalate the situation, but then he apparently raised the weapon, because the next sound she heard were the cops shouting at him to drop it. And then the shots rang out. She remained frozen, unable to process what had just happened. For a moment, she couldn't even grasp that it was over. She didn't come out until the officers began sweeping through the house, calling her name as they moved from room to room. No one spoke to her directly, but the sight of a body covered by a white sheet near the entryway made everything devastatingly clear. It had to be Wayne. That moment must have shattered her. There was still a piece of her that cared, no doubt, and being confronted with the truth like that must have been horrifying. At least, that's how she described it. According to the official account, Wayne had opened fire, even managed to hit a police vehicle. The officers returned fire, and it ended there. "Just awful," Miles muttered, struggling to find the right words. "How's Carly doing?" "She's hanging in," came the reply. "She's in therapy," Vicky added. "Not with me. It's too personal, but I helped her find someone who's excellent. I really think she's going to be okay." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of it all settling around them. Neither spoke, both quietly trying to process everything. Then Vicky spoke again. "There's something else, Miles." He didn't look startled. "The truth is, Carly's not in a place where she can be a mother. Not yet. But the idea of her baby ending up in foster care, she can't handle that. Newborns are usually adopted pretty fast. You know that as well as I do." "I do, but even so," she took a breath. "I'll just say it. Carly asked if you and I would adopt the baby. I told her I had to talk to you first. But Miles, I want this child, more than I can say." Miles was taken aback. Becoming a father again wasn't something he'd ever imagined, not at his stage in life, especially not after Vicky's health diagnosis had made having children of their own impossible. The thought of raising an infant had simply never entered his mind. He didn't know what to say. Vicky continued softly, trying to fill the space left by his silence. "I've spoken with a social worker and a lawyer from the hospital. They told me this kind of prearranged adoption isn't typical, but it's completely legal and above board." "You talked to them before you talked to me?" he asked, a little hurt. "I needed to make sure it was even an option before I brought it up," she said. "I didn't want to come to you with something that couldn't happen." "And what is Carly expecting in return? Money?" Nothing like that," Vicky said. "Though I'd like to help her get back on her feet. She's lost everything, the only real person she had. All she wants is to stay in the loop somehow. Maybe as an aunt, or just by getting photos and updates, milestones, things like that." Miles sat quietly, trying to take it all in. He understood why Vicky had reached out to the professionals, why she'd taken the steps she had. What stung was being left out of that part of the process. He wished they'd taken that road together. Could he do this again? Raise a child from infancy? When the child turned 18, he'd be well into his 60s. Would he still have the stamina? The patience? Still, despite the questions swirling in his mind, there was one thing he knew without hesitation. If Vicky truly wanted this child, with her whole heart, he couldn't be the one to stand in the way. "Miles, please, say something." He looked into her eyes, those soft, steady brown eyes he loved so deeply. "So, what do we need to do to make the adoption official?" That was how Ella came into their lives. It wasn't instantaneous. There were forms to fill out, legal steps to take, home assessments to pass. But in time, everything was finalized, and they became a family. The three of them. 4, if you counted Delaney, who immediately became fiercely protective of her little sister. Miles and Vicky did everything they could to support Carly. They helped her enroll in a nearby technical college, where she earned a certificate and was hired at a dental office. A while later, Carly started seeing someone, a former patient, and the relationship appeared to be becoming serious. They still see each other a few times a year, and Vicky keeps her updated between visits, sending pictures and sharing moments. Miles and Vicky are content. They don't plan to have more children. Vicky brings Ella with her to the hospital daycare whenever she's on shift, checking in as often as she can. Miles makes it a point to stop by when he can, always finding time to see the two people he now considers the heart of his world. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.